Good day everybody, welcome to another Affinity Photo tutorial. This week I'm going to do this picture that you can see on the screen at the moment of the future city. So as usual, let's get started. I'm going to start off with this picture here and I just want the foreground of this picture. So I'm going to use my selection brush tool, fairly big brush using my right and left bracket keys, and I'm just going to select the foreground of this picture here. Quite a quick selection. Going to come up here to refine, make my brush a little bit smaller and just go over these little trees here. And then down here to the output box and click on new layer and click apply. That should just give us this foreground here. The next picture that we're going to bring over is the picture of the sky. So this picture here, we're just going to copy this one straight over, Command C, back over to our picture, and we're going to click on this background here and Command V and just put that straight in the background. We'll grab our move tool here and we'll just stretch that out a little bit and move it up. About there, looks pretty good. We'll just stretch that out. You move it down a little bit. About there looks pretty good. While I'm here, I'm just going to get rid of this little line here. So I'm just going to come back to my cutout of my foreground. Might just grab my smudge brush here. Just smudge that a little bit so we can't see that line. That looks pretty good. Okay, on our picture of our sky here, I'm going to come down here to recolor. Going to clip that just to the sky and bring that into the blues, the darker blues about here. On the foreground picture here, which is the grass and the mountain here, I'm going to add another adjustment and I'm going to add a selective color. Just clip that to that foreground. Make sure on this little color drop down box you have neutrals selected, and we'll bring the cyan up to 30. And the yellow to -15. Looks pretty good. And we can just collapse that box there. So we've got our sky in place and our foreground in place. So we're ready to bring over our next picture, which is the picture of the city here. And I've already used my selection brush tool and I've cut the city out. As you can see here, I'm just going to copy that over with a Command C. Back to our picture. So I want that in front of the sky, but behind the foreground. So I'm just going to click on the sky, Command V, put it in front of the sky but behind the foreground, and then I'm going to make that a lot smaller. Make sure you're on your move tool, and we'll place it about there for now. So that's not too bad. So what I'm going to do on this city picture, right on top here, I'm going to add a new pixel layer and I'm going to clip it to the city. I'm going to change the blend mode to overlay and grab my brush tool here. On my brushes, I want a nice sort of soft brush is fine. On my color, I'm going to start off by clicking here and I'm going to start off with a sort of yellow color. So just click in the yellow here. I'm going to zoom all the way into the city, make my brush a little bit bigger. What I'm going to do is start painting some of these colors. Let's bring this flow up to 100%. Just going to start painting some of these windows here, just very randomly around the city. I'm going to change my color now. I'm going to change it to an orangey color. Paint some more of these lights in here. And change my color again, double click, coming into this sort of bluey color. This one I'm going to make my brush a little bit smaller. Going to hold it right on top of this light here, click once, hold my shift key down all the way down to the bottom and click again. Let's make a little bit of a darker color. And let's do the same here, click once, hold shift key down all the way down to the bottom. Might redo this one again, it's not that bright. And maybe a sort of magenta color. This one here, click once, hold shift all the way down. That looks pretty good. And maybe over here as well. Let's change it to red now, a really nice red color. And I'm going to paint red up here. All these lights down here, I'm going to make red. Very subtle little things that we're doing here. And let's do this building here, nice and red. Let's paint that in. A little bit smaller brush down here. Red light up there. Okay, Command 0, that looks pretty good, nice and colourful. So the next picture we'll bring over is the picture of our stars here, so Command C. Going to put those in front of the sky here, Command V. Over on our Move tool, and we'll resize that so it looks a lot better. Lots of stars. Let's change that to screen. Got some stars in place now. While we're here, we will add on this sky, we'll add an exposure as well and just drop that down, and we will bring that a little bit darker, and we'll play with that again a little bit later. So we've got our stars in place. Now, let's bring over this picture of a 8-ball or snooker ball or billiards ball, whatever you call it. And I've already cut the billiards ball out. So we're going to take this over to our photo. So Command C, back over here, and we want this one, front of the city, Command V. We're going to change the blend mode to screen. We're going to make it really quite big, and we're going to turn it round. And let's position it. Want it in front of the city, but behind the background here. So I'm going to make that a lot bigger. Bring that up. A lot bigger again and down. And as you can see, this is going to be our dome, or the start of our dome. Okay, so we've got that in place. Right on top of that, we're going to place this picture here. Command C. Back over to our picture, right on top of the 8-ball here, Command V. We'll make that quite big, right over the top. Now on our 8-ball here, we'll come back and click on that. We'll come up to Select and Selection from Layer. Then we'll come back to this picture of the network here. We'll grab our erase brush. Everything's on 100%. And we'll come over to our picture. You might see it's going to erase inside of here. So we want to come up here and invert the selection. Brush quite big, and we're going to make sure we erase everything outside. Just like that. We can get rid of the marching ants now. Then on that dome, we'll come up here to our blend modes and pick screen. While we're on our network, we'll just grab our smudge brush here. Make that nice and small, and I'm just going to fix up the edges here. Okay, that looks a little bit better. So we've got our dome in place. The next thing I'm going to do is click on the city layer here and add a new pixel layer. On that new pixel layer, I'm going to change the blend mode to overlay again. Come over here to my brush tool. Make sure I'm on again a nice soft brush. The color I'm going to go for this time, clicking on this color, is a green color. I'm going to change my flow down to 25%. My hardness is 0. I'm going to bring my brush fairly big. Actually, I'm going to bring my flow up a lot more to about 100%. So I've got my flow 100%, my opacity 100%. And I'm going to move this pixel layer behind the city. And I'm just going to paint a bit of a green glow in there. Like the city is sort of on a nuclear power and it's making this green glow, but I think that green needs to be a lot stronger, so let's change that. That's a little bit better. There we go. Got that green glow. Don't go outside the lines. Make my brush a little bit smaller. I've got that green glow behind the city. There we go. Not looking too bad. I'm going to copy that with a Command J. I'm going to move one copy up in front of the grass area here. Grab my move tool and bring that down. That one I'm going to change the blend mode to soft light and drop the opacity to about 50%. Stretch it out. And I'm going to put a Gaussian blur on that as well. So down here on our live filters, Gaussian blur, just bring that all the way up to 100. Just blur that a little bit. Also, while we're here on the foreground here, I'm going to add an exposure down on adjustments. Come down to exposure, clip the exposure just to the foreground, and I'm going to make that really dark. And then I'm going to invert that layer, Command I. Grab my brush, bring my flow down this time to about 25%. Fairly big brush. Getting our colors back to default by hitting D on our keyboard. Make sure we're painting in white. We'll drop that flow down a little bit more, I think maybe down to 10%, 10, 11%, that's fine. Big brush, and I'm just going to make this area a little bit darker and sort of blend that in. Looks a little bit better, so we're starting to get somewhere. Okay, ready for my next picture now, which is this picture of the tree. Again, I've cut this picture out using my selection brush tool, so I'm going to copy that over, Command C. Up to the top here, right on top, Command V. Grabbing the move tool, let's move this tree in position. I'm going to stretch it up, bring it in, putting it right down here, and then I'm going to bring that in with my move tool just so I can see the tree there. Maybe stretch it up a little bit more. And let's just bring it in. That looks pretty good. On that tree, I'm going to add a selective color. Let's clip that to the tree. Again, make sure we're on neutrals. Up to 30, -15. And also on that tree, I'm going to add an exposure. Clip that to that tree. Bring the exposure right down. There, looks pretty good at the moment. So let's collapse that. Let's copy that tree with Command J. Let's come up here to Arrange and flip horizontal. Let's bring this one over this side. And again, bring it in just till we see that tree coming in. Maybe a bit more. About there. Let's just maybe move this tree back a little bit. Bring that in a little bit. Okay, we can always play with that a little bit later. So we've got our trees in place. So now let's bring over the picture of these leaves here. On this one, I use my selection brush tool with Add turned on. Up here, Add turned on, and I just went around and clicked in all the white spaces and then used my selection brush tool to tidy it up a little bit and cut all the leaves out so they're just on their own layer. So let's bring them over, Command C, over to our image. Let's put those right on top, Command V, make that a little bit smaller. Now turn that around and place that one sort of up the top here, above the tree. Now you can see there's still some little spots here that I've missed. So what I'm going to do is just click on that, come over here to this flood select tool again. I've got the tolerance at 20. Let's zoom in a little bit. Right on those little areas, just click on them and delete. Again, delete, delete. Get rid of those. And that'll give you sort of a little idea how I cleaned all the trees up. And that's not looking too bad. Maybe a tiny little bit in there if we can get it. And then Command D to get rid of the marching ants. So that looks pretty good. So let's do the same adjustments on the leaves that we did on the tree. So let's just open the tree up and we'll just copy these. Command J, and we'll take that and clip it to the leaves. Let's make a copy of those leaves now. Click on the leaves and Command J. We'll come up here to Arrange and Flip Horizontal. Come to our Move tool and we'll just change it a little bit and maybe make that a bit smaller so we can see what we're doing, and maybe make those leaves come down the tree a little bit more. Command 0. That looks pretty good at the moment. On each of these leaf layers, I'm just going to click on the first one and add a layer effects on that one, and click on outer glow. And I'm going to sort of make it sort of a greeny outer glow. So let's pick on green, sort of just a light green. Let's move this radius the tiniest little bit until you just see that outline, and then take that intensity all the way down. Let's do that to this other layer, this leaves over here as well. The FX, the layer effects, outer glow, click on the color, light color, very slightly, and just till you see that outline, and then drop the intensity all the way down. Okay, might be able to just darken these up a little bit as well. A little bit darker. Do the same to the other one. A little bit darker. That's okay, looking good. So let's bring over our next picture now, which is this picture of the hunter. And I came over to this picture and I grabbed this oxygen tank. You can see that I've cut the oxygen tank out and copied it over and added it here to the hunter. So I've got the oxygen tank on. On the oxygen tank, I've added an exposure adjustment. And I've also added an exposure to the hunter, and then I cut the hunter out. So he's just on his own layer with the oxygen tank. And I've just grouped all those layers together. So I'm just going to copy that group over, Command C, and we're going to put him just in front of the trees here, Command V. Move him into place, make him a bit smaller, a little bit smaller. I want it to look like he's sort of stepping out of this big forest, looking out to that city. So on the hunter group, I am going to add that selective color. Clip it to the group. Make sure I'm on neutrals. Bring that up to 30, the cyan up to 30, and the yellows down to -15. Click off that. You can just see what that's done there. Also on the group of the hunter, I'm going to add another exposure. Clip that to the group and then just darken him down a little bit. On the hunter himself, in that group, just the hunter, I'm going to come down here to the layer effects. Again, that outer glow. Again, let's pick that sort of lighter green. Again, let's just bring that radius up a tiny little bit till we see the lines, then bring the intensity all the way down. Click off that. So that's just on the hunter. That go on, let's have a look. Tiny little outline. That's just exactly what we want. So we need our foreground here to be a little bit darker. So we'll come back to the foreground here and we'll add another exposure. Drop that, clip it. Just make that a little bit darker. About there, looks pretty good. And on that one that we're painting on, make sure we're in white. We'll grab our brush. Bring that up a little bit. We've still got that 10-11%. We'll just make that a little bit darker along there. We will bring our trees down a little bit. So on each of our tree layers, let's make them a little bit darker. That looks good. On the other tree layer, we'll make that a little bit darker. That looks good. So what I'm going to do now is add some ground fog. So right in front of our man here on the man group, I'm going to add a new pixel layer. Make sure I'm painting in white. Let's come over here to our brushes, and I've got this fog brush here. So I've got this free fog brush from Brushies. I'm just going to pick the first one here. It's quite big. Let's grab our brush. Quite big. Make sure we're painting in the white color. Make our brush quite big. You can see it's just going to put this fog behind our man. So let's just click that, and we've got this fog layer now. On that, let's add a mask. We're just going to blend this in a little bit. So let's come over here to our gradient tool, and let's just drag down, but let's turn that around. So the white's on the bottom and the black's on the top. You can see that that's just now faded in. So let's just bring that down a little bit. So we've got this ground fog. That looks pretty good. I'm going to copy that fog layer, Command J, and I'm going to bring one down in front of our foreground here. So we've got the fog in the background, and the one in the background, let's grab our move tool. I'm just going to move down a little bit. Okay, one last thing I might do, I might just click on the background of this dome here, add a new pixel layer. I'm just going to clip it to the dome, change the blend mode to overlay. Make sure I'm in black with a nice soft brush. Got my brush tool here, let's go down to 20%. Just going to give this dome a little bit of depth, a little bit of shadow in here. That looks a little bit better, just giving that a little bit more depth. Okay, so we've got everything in place now. Let's come right up to the top layer. Come up to Layer and Merge Visible. Give us one layer. Give us one picture with all these layers in it right on top. You know how much I love the tone mapping, so let's click on tone mapping. I'll pick this detailed one this week. I'll bring the tone compression all the way down to about 15. I'll bring the exposure down as well. And also the saturation down a little bit, and the vibrance all the way up. And on this radius of detailed refinement, I'll just bring the amount up a little bit more. And click on apply, and a couple more little things to add. Right on top, I'm going to add another adjustment, which is the curves, and then just bring the middle down, flatten the blacks a little bit, sort of making that little S curve. Click off that, and then my last favorite adjustment, you all know what it is, which is this lens filter. Just gives it a little bit more pop. And there we go, everybody. That is my picture for this week of the future city. I hope you have enjoyed the tutorial. If you have, please give it a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing to my channel. If you did appreciate the tutorial, you can head over to the Buy Me a Coffee site and show your appreciation there. All the pictures that I have used in the tutorial this week will be linked below for you to go and get those pictures so you can do your own composite. But until next time, I'm going to say to you, stay well, stay safe, and I'll see you in my next video.